Hello and welcome to episode 11 of the Eternal Insiders podcast. This is take 2. Okay, we had some technical difficulties on take 1, so we're re-recording it. With me is Daniel Maudsley, our newest addition to the team, I'd say, our MC, the voice of Eternal MMA from this point forward. Dan, welcome.
Thanks, Ben. So as you mentioned, take 2. Hopefully we'll get the technical difficulties sorted this time around, but thanks for having us on, and excited to have a chat with you. I've been enjoying listening to the Insiders podcasts throughout this isolation period, and hearing the stories of the various fighters and coaches that you've had on, and I've actually really found the stories, sort of you and Cam's origin stories quite interesting too. Hearing where you guys came from. So yeah, it's been quality listening. So hopefully I don't scare off too many viewers.
No, you're the we've got a professional, so it's good to have someone that's not a muppet hosting. You can probably take over and host the podcast. Might do a bit better. Unfortunately, Cam is AWOL at the moment. He organised this after the little technical difficulties, and here he is. Look, I've just let him in. For Cam's benefit, we were just describing to the listeners or the watchers how he's AWOL, and there's a big penalty coming his way, but we should be used to it by now. Here he is. Look, as ever, Cam. What I love about Cam is he's consistently fucking late for everything that we ever do. And he can't even argue with me about that. So
I can't. Sorry, boys. I just did that drama this morning sorted out, so all good.
As long as you're all well and good, mate, we'll crack on.
Good day, Dan.
How's it going, Cam?
Good, mate.
So full disclosure, I've told our watchers and listeners that this is take 2. There's a small technical difficulty that we didn't press record on 1. I'm hoping that I might try and double it up here and get you recording as well. But Dan, I know we discussed it the other day, and we're going to cross over some old ground. But if you could just give the listeners an idea of how do you become an MC? Like, there's so many roles to do within the sport, and obviously you actually participate in jiu-jitsu. You fought Thai boxing before, so your route could have been completely different. So if you could just let us know how you sort of migrated into the MC role.
Yeah, well, I guess it was like all sort of unique kind of positions. I just sort of fell into it in a funny way, but like you mentioned there, I started, I guess my kind of martial arts journey started when I was pretty young. My uncle ran a gym called Coolum Beach Thai Boxing here on the Sunshine Coast. And, I trained sort of on and off with him since I was kind of like 5-ish, give or take. And, fought kind of through my teens, late teens into my kind of early 20s. Also, when I was younger, I was quite heavily involved in competitive surfing. When I got to the point where I realized I wasn't going to be a pro surfer, I still wanted to be involved in the sport, and, couldn't really shut me up on the contest sites. So they threw a microphone in my hand, and I started commentating surf comps. So it's kind of, while I was surfing, I was still training a lot of Muay Thai and fighting and competing and doing all the good stuff. And then I kind of had a couple of years off from martial arts when I was about 20, kind of 20 to 21, or maybe it would have been probably 19 to 21. Sorry. Just stopped training, just, kind of uni and stuff got in the way. And then kind of got the itch again and really wanted to do some MMA. So then when I was, about 20, 21, I went into Combat Lab here on the Sunshine Coast, and first time I ever went in was just to do a bit of sparring with some of the fighters there, and we initially started doing just striking sparring, so it was obviously what I was used to, so it was okay. And then Joel said, who was the head coach, Joel Zapasvari, he said, we're going to add in some takedowns now. And I was like, oh Christ, okay, I have no idea what I'm going to do. And he said, look, don't worry about it, just when they take you down, we'll just kind of stand back up. They won't hold you down. I was like, okay. So I was sparring Joel Fay, and he shot him for a double leg, big slam, drove his shoulder into my ribs, and he actually broke one of my ribs. And I'd never been taken down before. So I just thought that's how a takedown felt. And I was like, this is just ridiculous. I never want to get taken down again. And then, obviously a few days later, I ended up going to the doctors and it made a lot more sense. But yeah, so I started doing a bit of jiu-jitsu then, and Joel Zepasvari, the head coach Combat Lab, he then started doing his own sort of boutique promotion on the Sunshine Coast called Coastal Combat. And
is that what you call it? A boutique promotion? What the fuck does that mean?
I like that word. Yeah. So anyway, he the first one that came around, he kind of cornered me and said, "Do you want to do the MC for it?" And I was initially kind of didn't want to do it because I don't know. I've always got this sort of kind of impression in your head that a lot of MCs kind of older, sort of kookier dudes. Not all of them. Some are really cool and fantastic at what they do. No, I wasn't making reference to him. No, but like it's just that there is a bit of a stigma there, and I was thinking, geez, is that what I want to kind of hitch my sort of wagon to? And then Joel kind of talked to me a fair bit about it, and he said, just because there's not any other younger guys that do it doesn't mean that you can't do it, and kind of talked me around to it, and did the first show. And I think everyone was a bit nervous because no one really knew if I would, if I'd be able to do it or not. But first show went pretty well, and that was probably about 4 or 5 years ago now. And it's just kind of snowballed from there. I've been really lucky to work with a few other promotions, sort of locally in Queensland, and then got the call up to the big show with you guys, I guess, the end of last year. So yeah, really kind of happy with where it ended up. It's literally, I'm a very busy person. I do a lot of different things, but I think commentating and emceeing fights is definitely at the top of the list as far as things that I really enjoy the most.
So Joel can spot a bit of talent, obviously.
Yeah. He'll never let me forget it either.
Have you got how many shows you've called? How many shows?
I was actually thinking about that when we after the first take of this podcast, and I tried to do a rough number in my head, and I think I'm pretty sure I'd be etching about 30, maybe a touch over. So I'm got a bit of experience now, but it doesn't sound like it feels like a lot more than it sounds, I guess. It's probably much more impressive if I said how many fights, because I've probably announced probably 350 fights.
It's more impressive you saying that you've only done 30 shows, because in our opinion you are excellent at that job, and the experience that you've got probably doesn't align with the quality of
the product
that you do. The product, it probably doesn't align with it, So look, if you're only going to get better with more experience, we look forward to it, and obviously very delighted to have you on board.
Yeah, well, that's right. I mean, I've certainly noticed that it has been quite a kind of steep learning curve. Like, I've noticed that I have got a lot better, obviously, with the more experience that I've got. So yeah, hopefully that kind of continues, and hopefully won't make too many mistakes in the future.
What I've noticed about all these ancillary roles and the people that do them is the ones that are the best at it are the ones that treat it like a professional job. So yourself, for example, rocked up to Perth with a ream full of notes on obviously all your prep. When we worked in New Zealand, Mike Angove did the same thing. He turned up with a big Bible of all his research, and he'd obviously spent a lot of hours. And you can tell the people that do that, and even when it comes to commentary as well, there's never dead air. There's plenty of facts and knowledge that you have. How important is your prep, and how much time do you spend per event on that prep?
Yeah, I mean, as cliche as it sounds, preparation is everything. Recently, I was listening to a podcast that John Anik was on, and John Anik made a really good point. I thought he said he was saying that if as far as what his research is when he does the calls the fights, because I think he's well and truly the gold standard for not only just mixed martial arts, but I mean sports commentary in general. He's well and truly one of the elite. And he said that when it comes to fights, if he gets through more than 30% of his notes, so more than 30% of what his kind of research got him, then he hasn't done enough research. And I that kind of really hit home for me, because sometimes in fights there is some dead air, and you do need some information, and you do need to make sure that you're familiar with the fighters, what they're good at, where perhaps their weaknesses are, where they could be exploited, and all those things. It really does add to the quality. So it is a pretty kind of time-consuming process. Coming into cards, I'd probably say that you're probably looking at a minimum 5 hours, probably more for a card. Because I'll do my best. I always have a rule. I always want to watch the last 3 fights of the fighter, and if it's a long fight, you might be skipping through pieces here and there, but you really want to try and get a good feel for them. So you watch their last 3 fights. Take down notes, look what they're good at, and then obviously one thing that really helps me is social media. It's a really good way to see where people are training. How often they're training. You can often quite tell from their social media. So yeah, I'll usually go through their last few fights, look over any commentary questions they might have answered, and then stalk them on social media and see if I can find any other gems.
The social media must help you with fighters who are maybe making debut, or it's their first fight, or second fight.
Yeah.
You can't get much knowledge of them off of previous performances. You're just going to have to look and see where they're training, who they're training with, and how excited they are to be getting into their debut fight, etc. That's it's going to be a lot more difficult than when John Anik's doing his research, and he's probably hours upon hours of watching on fighters, whereas you're maybe calling Bobby Brown making his debut out of a small town in the Sunshine Coast, and you've got to find out, you've got to find out a bit of information about him to the 30 people that's watching him on the pay-per-view.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I do find it much easier, obviously, researching guys where there's they have 10, 15 fights, and you can kind of go through, get a feel for what their style is, and and perhaps where they can win or where they can potentially lose their upcoming fight. So yeah, it is a bit of a challenge when it comes to debutants, trying to figure out exactly what to expect. Or but one thing that has helped, as I've been kind of involved in the kind of Australian MMA scene now for a few years, I've built some pretty good rapport with some gyms, and quite often guys will have a chat to me before. I'll ask, I might have a friend who trains there or something. I'll say, what can we expect from this guy? And they'll give us some info. So building those connections really helps when it comes to debutants, because you can kind of get a bit of inside information per se.
Have you ever had anyone reach out to you, like fighter-wise?
As in, like to give me information prior to the fight?
Or do you go around on the night and speak to fighters, or are you kind of done by the time you get to that stage?
I do really. I mean, like the dream for me is like to be able to sit down with every fighter on the card before the event, because that's obviously what they do in the UFC. They have the commentary meetings. So like the 3-man booth, whoever it is, Anik, DC, and Cruz will sit down with the fighters during the week, and they'll have a 20-minute, half an hour combo with them. So something like that would be unreal. Obviously, we don't have the kind of capacity to do that. So one thing that I'll try and do, if it's possible, is just get down to weigh-ins and, see everybody, have a chat. Perhaps if there's someone I'm not familiar with, go and introduce myself. Say, hey, I'm going to be the guy yelling at you in the middle of the cage at the start of the fight, and try and get a bit of info out of them and ask them how the camp's been and stuff. So yeah, it is good to kind of build that rapport if you do get an opportunity to go and speak to the fighter before, because you do often get some good little gems that they'll throw you to bring up on air.
Do you sometimes get that with pronunciations of people's names? Do you look at the fight card and say to yourself,
it's shocking. Yeah, sometimes I look at the sheet and just shake my head and go, there's no way I'm going to even attempt this without trying to ask them first. So what I'll actually do, if someone's name is really hard, I'll go and ask them how to say it, and I'll take my phone and I'll get them to say it to my phone and record it. And then I'll usually just chuck my earphones in and listen to it over and over, 10, 15 times. So I just kind of can ingrain it in my head and make sure that I do my best as far as getting it right. Because, it is doing what I do. I do take it quite seriously, in the sense that it is quite an honor really to be sort of, introducing fighters when they are, whether it's their first fight that they've, the first fight in their career, and they've got, their mum and dad and partner and friends in the crowd watching, or whether it's someone who's, 10, 15 fights deep into a pro career. It means a lot to these people, and it's something that they will, never forget. I know, I'll never forget when I fought. And it's sort of something that I do take quite seriously, and I want to do my best to try and make sure that, I don't stand out in the memory as doing something wrong.
I did see someone's notes. I don't know if it was in Perth last time, but I don't know if it's you or Mitch Tinley, but there was someone, very similar people, but there was someone had written phonetically like the name.
Yeah, that was me.
Yeah, I saw like it spelled out how you'd say it. I thought it was brilliant.
Yeah.
Like, it's such a good way to do it.
I do that as well, just to remind myself. And then, you know, when I'm actually reading my card, I'll obviously read the phonetic version as opposed to the actual name. So, yeah, that's my, I guess that's my safety net if I'm getting there and I'm still a little bit nervous about it.
Yeah, brilliant.
That's normally how Scottish people write words anyway. You've got a couple of extra consonants in there.
You can't write, can you?
Come on. So, with you having done roughly 30 events, is there anybody that sticks out that you've emceed the fight when they've been a debut and you've maybe followed them through 2 or 3 fights and they've, you know, and you've seen them progress? Is there anybody that sticks out like that in your mind that you've kind of followed their journey as well? Yeah,
okay. So I guess there's 2 fighters that come to mind, I guess, when you ask that. I guess, you know, the way that I kind of interpret that question is people that I've, you know, had the, I guess, privilege of being exposed to them early on in their career and sort of followed their development and kind of earmarked them early as something special. One would be David Martinez, former Eternal lightweight champion. You know, he's obviously one of the nicest guys in Australian MMA, and he trains at kind of a sister gym to the one I train at. He trains under Ryan Dunstan at Ignite Martial Arts in Caloundra, and that's about kind of 30 minutes away from where my gym is. And we're both under the Atos banner, so we do a fair bit of kind of cross training every now and then, I guess. And you know, I was lucky enough to start calling Dave's fights when he was in the amateur ranks, and he's someone that obviously has had a pretty fantastic career. A couple setbacks as of late, but you know, it was pretty cool to follow sort of his progression. You know, I think he ended up having about 11 amateur fights. So I think I might have called his last maybe 3 or 4 amateur fights and about, you know, probably 6 or so of his pro fights. So I have been lucky enough to kind of follow his career quite closely. And the other one that springs to mind, and this is a kid that I'm just super excited to see what happens with his future, is a young fellow by the name of Cooper Rush Royal. He's fighting out of Fitzroy Martial Arts up in northern Queensland, and he is just phenomenal.
I thought that's who you were going to say there. That just name just
really?
Just as you were going to say that. Yeah.
Well, it was funny because he was, you know, when you speaking of debutants earlier and not having any footage, Cooper had actually, when the first fight I called of him, he had a fight previously, but I couldn't find footage of it anyway. So there's no footage of it online. So I didn't really know what to expect. And all of a sudden, you know, within about the first 2 minutes of the first round that I commentated of him, I was just like, oh, this kid's something special. And he's had a couple of setbacks, you know. He's just rounding out his game. He's only young. I think he's only about 19 or 20. And his most recent performance, where he actually won the amateur flyweight title on Coastal Combat, was, you know, it's been very fun to see him kind of round out his game and fix, you know, fill some of those holes that some previous opponents have exploited. So it's been really fun following his career, and I'm pretty psyched to see what's next for him.
Yeah, and I think the majority of people going into that fight fancied Bruce to win that fight. I think
I
think the majority of people would have put their house on Bruce Corbani coming away with that title. I myself was very shocked when see actually how good Cooper was, and to see him win that fight, you know, it was a good performance.
Yeah.
And he's got such good striking, you know, with coach like Brad Coggle. You know, it's very, you know, he isn't just as traditional martial arts as what Brad's was, but he's got very dynamic striking.
Yeah, exactly. And I was of the same kind of opinion as you going into that Bruce Corbani fight. You know, I really thought that Bruce would be able to kind of mimic the same game plan that we saw Luke Davis have success with against Cooper. But you know, just the strides that Cooper made in his takedown defense and his wall wrestling was, you know, it's quite phenomenal to see how much better Cooper got in that short period of time. So if he keeps improving at that same sort of exponential rate, then, you know, the sky's the limit for the kid.
Is he a big flyweight? Because Bruce is a very small flyweight. Taking nothing away.
He has fought at bantamweight previously, Cooper, but he did get muscled around a bit at bantamweight. I do think he's a flyweight where he should be, but I don't think it's a particularly easy cut for him.
I think he's a similar size to Nav. I think him and Nav are very similar sized.
Right.
Oh, imagine that fight.
Yeah, that would be a great fight. Cam, write that down.
Yeah.
My phone's got some charge in it now, and that was why you couldn't get hold of me earlier. My phone had run out of charge as well, but I just clicked on the message, so we'll get that fight.
Nav is another one that I haven't had too many opportunities to announce or call his fights, but he's someone I'm super excited about. His performance on the Perth card end of last year was, start of this year was pretty spectacular. Perhaps a bit of a controversial finish, but he was looking fantastic up until that point.
Even in defeat, I've never seen Nav looking anything but fantastic. I mean, he took him over to Perth. When was the Cody Haddon fight? Was that 2019 as well? Or?
That was last year,
yeah. And he just looked phenomenal in that fight and ended up, managed to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. And Cody, obviously, is another extremely high-level fighter as well. And as soon as he seen an opportunity, he walked in a submission and finished the fight. But
that finishing sequence was something to behold. I mean, I've been watching this sport and watching and doing this sport for a long time, and the way that Cody finished the fight, like, you've got to go back and have a look on YouTube at the actual, the sweep or the whatever it was. That I can't remember the exact details, but I just remember the sequence, and it was like, how did he do that against Nav, who's a good grappler? It's not like
he's confident, must have been flying at that point as well. Cody to
and in the third round of a tough fight, it was really impressive to see. But talking of Perth, that was your debut for us, I believe. Am I right?
Yeah, debut emceeing. Yeah, I did. Commentate the card in Melbourne prior to that. Didn't get to do the research I would have liked, though, because Cam only gave me about 48 hours notice that I was commentating, but I won't hold that against him. Perth was my first time emceeing for you guys, and what a card to kick it off with. I mean, that main card, however many fights it was, 4 or 5 fights on that main card, was just banger after banger. There's the arena had a fantastic vibe in it, and all the fights just delivered. So some of the flyweight fights in particular.
The atmosphere came from the undercard, because the undercard was pretty special too. Like the amateurs were fighting like pros that day, and it's just a testament to the standard of Australian MMA at the grassroots level. Is through the roof at the moment, and any of those boys could have looked like they were fighting in a pro event that day.
Yeah, that full card tracked along. So the pace that card set from start
was perfect.
The level of technical ability and desire for fighters to finish fights was just phenomenal. And that was such a quick night. There was so many finishes.
And then kicking off the fight pass section with Mini T versus Jake Hurl, and what a fight that was.
Mini T is just so fun to watch. I mean, I don't think it's possible for him to be in a boring fight. His style is just action personified, and you could really see in that fight, that was definitely the most mature performance we've seen out of him. We saw his grappling and some of the strides that obviously you've helped him make there at Scrappy, Ben, and he's just so fun to watch. I can't wait until he steps in the cage next. It's always a good time, and Mini T's on the card.
I mean, Ben obviously spends a lot of time with Dan, but and knows him obviously inside out. But whenever I watch him, I don't obviously have that level of knowledge of him, but he just looks as if he's just in there looking to, finish the fight with every single strike that he throws. Every single strike that he throws has got so much power behind it, and the pace that he sets, and he's just happy to stand in that pocket and just throw. It's phenomenal.
Well, the issue with Daniel is, as he's growing up, like, obviously his Thai career started very young, and he had that sort of, I'm going to say, that inner cunt in him. Like, he wanted to get hold of people and do damage to people in the cage. And as he's got older, like, he runs a float center now. He's got his own float center. He's a bit hippified now, and he's mellowed a lot, which is great as a human being. But as a fighter, you need to maintain that fire. So what you might have noticed is that in that fight, he had a fucking excellent haircut. I don't know if you remember it.
I remember that, yeah.
But I'd been watching highlights of him back in the day when he was on a tear in the Thai scene, and he was a monster. And he had this mullet and this really shaven head with the big mullet at the back, and he just had this aura about him. And for this fight, I said to him, look, I want you to refine that. Go and get that haircut. Go and remember how you used to be. And that's how good of a student he is. He went and did it and trusted me that. And he found that in a killer again, which he's been missing, and he'll admit that in his last couple of fights. That's all that's been missing. We've done the technical work. He fully understands what he needs to do, wrestling and his jiu-jitsu. He's got his blue belt now. He's not a beginner when it comes to grappling and jiu-jitsu anymore, and wrestling. He's always had really good wrestling because of the Thai background with the heavy hips and stuff like that. It was just the mindset again. So I just have to, for that day, I just have to say to him, you are a cunt today, and you're going to go in there and you're going to take a soul. And when it's all over, you can be mini T again, and you can chill, and you can go back to that hippie-ish lifestyle that you like to lead. But I just need you to be that guy. And he did. I mean,
that's a cool little story. It's funny for me too. Like, when I was coming up with the Muay Thai scene, however many years ago, he was the one that everyone was looking at. That was when he was, I think we won the K1 World Championship at one point, and he was the guy in Australia. When it came to the kickboxing and Muay Thai scene. So to now see him make the transition into MMA has been fantastic. And that performance on that Perth card was it was awesome to see the evolution of him as a martial artist. And I love that story, bringing the haircut back and making all the difference.
It's as simple as that, really.
Yeah.
But the thing that people will never know about Daniel, because he'll never tell anyone, because he's the most humble bloke you've ever met, is he's a 3-time Muay Thai world champion. He's a 2-time cage Muay Thai world champion. He's beat just about a who's who of everybody. Like when he won the WMC world title, he fought the number 1 ranked Thai out of Lumpini, and beat him. So,
and a smaller weight class too, which is where the Thais.
Yeah. So he's and at the time that you're talking about, he was on a tear. Like he beat Andy Howson, who anyone who knows anything about Muay Thai has heard of Bad Company and Andy Howson. He beat Andy Howson in 4-ounce gloves. He beat Aaron Lee in 4-ounce gloves on John Wayne Parr's show. Aaron Lee is an Australian legend of Thai boxing. And then Aaron made the mistake of going, oh, well, if you fought me in full Thai rules, I'd beat you. So Daniel then went and fought him in full Thai rules and knocked him out in the first or second round. The kid's an animal. I've been everywhere. I've been to Japan with him to fight in K1. He's done everything, and he's 26 or 27 years old. And you're never going to hear that from his mouth. He just won't tell you. He walks around. He teaches the Thai class, and he walks around the gym, and people ask him questions, and he's just so humble. And I explain to people that that's a 3-time world champion. That's like the cream of the crop that's teaching you there. And he's just the humblest dude, but his potential is unlimited. It's just flyweight's such a small division, and it tends to be the top of the division. They're all like really, really, really accomplished grapplers. So at some point we're going to have to take that chance, and put him in with someone who's probably more skilled on paper grappling than he is, and see whether we can fix a game plan and train right so that doesn't become a factor. So it's interesting times for him, but he's definitely turned a corner in his last fight, and he looked like an MMA fighter as opposed to a Thai fighter doing MMA.
Yeah.
So anyway, we digress. That was the start, though. That fight, had everything. Dan put it on Jake Hurl from the opening bell, and Jake,
so tough.
Credit to him,
tough. Yeah,
did not take a backward step, and he had Daniel in some bad positions. After the commentary team even said, "Oh, it's over" at one point, and Jake fought through and managed to take Dan down, take his back, and have his neck for a little while. And it was a good fight for Dan to come through some adversity as well, sit in the corner, listen to some advice, go and implement that and do that. And that's where he's really matured as a fighter.
Even in defeat as well, though. I mean, taking not to take anything away from Jake Carroll. Jake Carroll's someone else that we're looking to keep active and keep involved. This year and next year, we do see that there is such an exciting flyweight division out there.
Yeah.
Jake's hopefully going to be a big part of that as well. So,
that
card.
But that really set the bar for the rest of the card, and I feel like he had Logan come out after that, and the first serious shot he hit Ryan Robertson. Ryan doesn't remember the rest of the fight. He was just fighting on pure instinct from that point.
And look, that's I don't think anybody was expecting that either. I don't think Paul would even have been expecting to finish that fight as quickly as he did. And it's probably an exact 180 degrees transformation from his last appearance in Perth, where Paul was in the end of a super quick fight that that he picked up the L on. So he probably finds it was a bittersweet way to correct that loss, albeit against a different opponent. But another great performance by a flyweight.
Yeah, it was a tough card to sort of come in on as MC and doing the post-fight commentary, because obviously the pace of the card was moving so fast that you had to fill a little bit, and your post-fight interviews were probably a little bit longer than they normally would be. But I thought, as a credit to yourself, obviously you handled it as we would have expected. But the fighters as well, they seem to be very good at answering the questions and giving you the information that you needed to keep the interviews going. Did you find that do you find the fighters these days are much better at talking on the mic?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's becoming more and more a part of our sport, the ability to have that media type training, that media savvy. So I think fighters, particularly professional fighters, are realizing that if they want to, be the full package that, an international promotion's looking for, then they need to make sure that they can, deliver a good message on the mic, after a big performance, and, realizing that sort of marketing aspect is certainly something that these bigger promotions do look into. So it's something that we've seen, I think, sort of progress, and collectively the fighters have gotten a lot better. Even just over the last kind of 3 years or so, we've seen, the quality of post-fight interviews get better and better. And, I mean, a perfect example of someone who understands post-fight interviews perfectly, I think, is young Casey O'Neill. Casey left a pretty awesome message at the end of her interview with me, and that type of thing sticks in people's minds. So fighters understand that it's a rare opportunity, I guess, to display to the audience a little bit more about your personality and make yourself stand out. And Casey did a fantastic job. Crazy performance. 50. I think I scored that fight. I gave her 10-8 rounds in every single round, and then jumps on the mic and calls out everyone else and tells us that she's going to keep on winning. That's perfect. That's what you want as a manager or as someone who's trying to push her to the next level. That's perfect. A fantastic performance, incredible post-fight interview. She's the one that everyone's talking about.
Yeah, and look, I agree with you 100%. I mean, I don't know where it came from either, to tell you the truth. But,
you told her to say it, Karen, didn't
you? No, I don't. But look, the composure that she actually shows, and the intelligent way that she answers questions after fights, I've been amazed with since, for a long time. But I think the turning point in that was at Eternal 48 in Melbourne. She answered a very difficult question very maturely. And very respectfully, gave a good post-fight interview, and she done again at Eternal 51. But yet again, going back to Minnie T, he set the bar with that straight away. I mean, how crazy was that performance in that fight? And then for him to compose himself and give a post-fight speech that he didn't forget to thank anybody that he was going to thank. He spoke in a tone and a tempo that was perfect for the interview. And the performance moved along straight after that. But yeah, I think everybody done very well.
Yeah,
I was really impressed with Jack Della's post-fight interview actually as well. He's on the first take of this podcast, Ben, you kind of said he's got a bit of cheekiness to him that perhaps a lot of people aren't aware of. And one of the questions that I asked him was along the lines of, obviously that was his second time fighting Glenn. What felt different? And he kind of looked at me with a little smirk and he said nothing. So he's it was a fun interview.
He said, you said, was that? And he different to the first fight? And he went, no. And that was it. That's all he gave. That's all he gave.
Yeah.
But in the Kevin Doucette interview, he swore and then he said, "Pardon my French." And obviously, Kevin being French, a lot of people wouldn't have picked up on that. But Jack's very smart, and his thing is he always ends up like he tries to end the interview. Like he'll go, after Doucette, he went, "Right, that's enough from me. Let's get this main event on." And then after yours, he went, "Everyone, that's enough from me. Like everyone drive home safely," or something like that. Sends everyone on their way.
My favourite post-fight moments from Jack isn't on the microphone. It's when he does the robot. I can't remember if he done the robot after EP11 or not. Did he do the robot?
No, he didn't. He did the Tyson. You know where Tyson
yeah, that's right.
Forearm down. The robot was after the first Glenn Pettigrew fight. If you watch the post Glenn Pettigrew fight, he robots across the cage to the rest of us.
And that was such a fantastic fight. I mean, Glenn looked great in the first round, but you kind of got the sense that Jack was feeling him out and getting his timing, and just the power that Jack has in his hands is something that, you can't teach. You can't teach someone to hit that hard. That's just God-given ability, and I'm so excited for what comes next to him. And actually, on that note, when Jack got the finish, I actually looked over at you in the corner, Ben, and you were shaking the cage so hard. You were so excited. But I honestly thought the cage wall was about to fall off. So it was pretty cool to see the emotion in his corner there too. And who could blame you? I mean, that finish was slick.
We talked about it. We talked about it on Thursday when we spoke before. But for me, like, there's so much invested in it because my gym is essentially my extended family. Obviously, I care deeply about everybody that's in it and all my fighters and stuff, but I get to know all their loved ones, their parents. Like, it's a proper community. So the responsibility on me, not just to train them right and put them in there in the best shape that they can be in with the best chance to win, but also I'm creating the matches as a promoter. Like, between Cam and I, we make the fights, and it's happened before that they've come off on the wrong side of those matches and been, some of them get hurt or need stitches and whatever. And then I've got to deal with the families and they're upset with me because their loved one got hurt and didn't get the result that they wanted for. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen that often for us at the moment. But, after Josh Deller's fight with Izzy, he was quite badly cut. And I'm good friends with his wife and his mum. And they were very devastated. It was the main event. It was towards the end of the night. Everything was emotionally charged. And we were backstage and Josh was getting stitched up and I was not flavour of the month. And it was really hard for me because I was devastated too. Josh is my son's godfather and, we're very close. And so for me to see his dream go away was one thing. I wasn't happy with the way they went away in terms of the referee's stoppage and stuff like that either. So there was a lot of emotion for me, and then to have to deal with the emotions of the loved ones as well, and feel the responsibility for that weighs really heavy on me. Like, I don't take it lightly. It's not something that I take lightly. I don't just throw these boys in there. I always give my guys hard fights. It's very rare that my boys get walkovers. So. So yeah, it's tough. It's a tough line, and like, I stand cage side, and I'm invested in that fight, and I get really carried. I've watched all their fights millions of times, and I sometimes I look to the corner when the stoppages come in, and I see all of us, like, Ryan's there jumping up and down, Josh Deller's there jumping up and down. I'm shaking the cage. Like, I remember Mitch Martin when he beat Jason Petropoulos in Adelaide. I mean, that whole week had been just the biggest nightmare of my life. And then Minnie T got beat in a close decision to Paul Logar, and Mitch was my last chance to salvage something from Adelaide. Fucking Adelaide. And when Mitch got that finish with 2 minutes.
It's not over, Adelaide. It's not over.
No, it's not. It's not even begun. But I remember I climbed the cage and I jumped in, and I always tell the boys off for doing that, but I was just so relieved that it had been such a shit week, and to finish up with Mitch actually managing to win I was just overcome with emotion, and there's no way that a 38. I think I was 38 at the time. I should be leaping cages at my age. It's not recommended. My knee's got a bit of a jar as I landed on the other side. Yeah, I'm into it. I'm into it.
And that was such a tense fight as well with Jason and Mitch. I mean, it was back and forward, and it was on the ground, and your nerves must have been taken a pounding with that fight.
Well, it was 2 rounds down, if you're honest, going into the third. But I knew how tired Jason was, and I was pretty confident that Mitch will dig. Mitch will do what Mitch does, and he'll dig deep until the 15th minute to find that win, and that's what he did.
I just want to double check that when you did your Went to Warrior show in Perth, you didn't shake the cage panels?
But definitely not, no. No, I didn't want anyone to touch those cage panels, mate.
Ben had built that cage, so...
Yeah, there was a couple of bolts missing that we managed to sort of get past the commission's checks and stuff that day. Hopefully they don't listen to this podcast, but all's well that ends well.
Nobody died.
No, definitely not. So, and then we went back to the Gold Coast for what was a pretty phenomenal night, massive card, 3 title fights. I mean, you've kicked off in a pretty major way, Dan. Like, you've had some big events to call.
Yeah, I mean, I've
been
so lucky to come in and, been so lucky to come into the events that I have. I mean, both those 2 shows in particular, they stand out for me as probably, my favourite shows I've ever announced. Not just necessarily because of the production aspect and how big the show is, but just because the fights were just fantastic. I mean, that Perth card is insane. And like you said, the Gold Coast card, 3 title fights and, some star-making performances. I mean, like Jack Jenkins, I don't know what he is, but I don't think I'm the same breed, whatever he is, because the way that he fought in that fight was fantastic. He's so well-rounded, his athleticism, his pressure, everything. I mean, he is someone that I'm so excited for what's next. Obviously, we also had the lightweight title fight, Josh Togo looking fantastic. That was
proposed as Josh Togo, and how game plan for certain fights, fantastic.
Yeah, and we spoke when we did this the first time around. About sometimes it can be difficult. From my perspective, if I have an emotional investment in one of the fighters, and I'm quite close with Ben Wall, so seeing Josh Togo's performance, it's kind of a little bit spine tingling, I guess, in a sense, because you don't want to see your friend get hurt, but then you also can appreciate just how talented and how spectacular that performance was. And talking to Josh after the fight, he there's another one who did a really good job on the mic, and I think he's definitely one of the brighter prospects in that lightweight division.
Josh is just a great guy. When you look at what he does for a living as well, he works with disadvantaged Aboriginal children as well, and look how composed and and how nice a person he is. When he's fighting as well, and post fight, he's just Josh is somebody that we're proud to have as a champion. He's just a good bloke.
And then you go to Stephen Erceg. Who's going to stop that guy? Right? There's nothing he can't do. He's so technically proficient everywhere. Like, he's not a big, scary looking dude like some people are. He's just so technical, and you make a mistake with him, he's got the timing to knock you out, and he's got the jiu-jitsu to finish you if he stuns you. So.
If you look at Stephen's last few fights, I mean, can you think of anybody who's had performances and wins against the calibre of opponent in weight classes as what Stephen's had? He's bet Shannon Ross, Tim Moore, Paul Woga, the last 3 fights, and finished off. Yeah. Hey, Bobby.
Bobby Truder. You're going to be on TV.
Look, one of the things I really loved about that performance from Steve on the Gold Coast was just how well it displayed his well-rounded skill set. He dropped him with the big punch. Then he got to show off his fantastic grappling and got the win by submission. So it was just a really kind of clean, tidy performance where he really showed us, how well-rounded his game is and what he's capable in that division. Because, I think Ben used the word, he's a technician, in every sense of the word. He's so technical on the feet. His grappling is the exact same. So he's just one of those guys that's so fun to watch because, he's almost just waiting for a mistake. Yeah. And, he's the kind of guy that'll capitalise on it 9 out of 10 times.
And you look at him in a poster or in the pre-fight video and he's so unassuming.
It looks like he's supposed to be coming over to fix your computer or something, and then he's just knocking guys out.
He's dropped both Paul Loga and Shannon Ross, with a very similar hook.
One shot,
yeah.
That's special. Like Logan's as tough as they come, and so Shannon. Shannon was on a tear. He essentially, Shannon's got some work to do now to rebuild, and he can definitely do that. But Shannon was knocking on the door. And now he's had to go back, and he's going to have to put a little run together to get back to where he was. But that's the game at the highest level. If you want to get into the big show, you need to almost be unblemished. So, and
realistically, there's only one fight left that I can think of off the top of my head at this moment for Stephen Erceg, and it's a fight that's got a little bit of history in it as well. So you never know, we might see that fight happening soon.
Dropping a little teaser there, Cam.
Melbourne to sort themselves out.
Yeah.
Like Melbourne has caused such an issue. The health problems down in Melbourne are causing such an issue to the whole fight because they're such an important hub of our fight community. There's so many fighters down there that we can't access at the moment. And obviously,
we had 3 events built that we're now scrambling to rebuild. It's.
Yeah, but there you go. It is what it is.
What's happening in West Australia? Are your borders open yet? Are we?
Mate, this guy's not going to open the borders until fucking 2023 by the sound of it. He's taking it to the next level, But in some terms, like if I wasn't a fight promoter who had an interstate promotion, I wouldn't give a fuck because we're operating pretty well down here. It's almost back to normal. Life. People are shaking hands. People are, people are just living as normal. There's none of the sort of all this is all gone, like it's forgotten about, And we're in full contact in the gyms, and businesses are back operating, and we can have crowds in venues. They're doing a concert here soon. It's going to be the first concert back with people at it. So WA as a state is doing really well, but the ramifications of keeping the borders closed, for me, not being an expert, and this could be a completely uneducated opinion, is at some point someone's going to come here with that fucking virus, So they need to. I thought what I thought they were doing was letting the hospitals get enough space and the capability to deal with outbreaks of the virus, but you can't live forever without having some of that virus here. Because unless they find a cure, which they won't, well, I'm pretty sure that there won't be ever a cure for it. But a vaccine is debatable too. What are we going to do? Stay closed forever? So something has to happen sooner or later that gets us out of this. We can't be an island that is just WA for the rest, within an island for the rest of our lives. So it's really weird. It's really frustrating as a someone who operates nationally and internationally that we don't know the plan, we don't know the timeline, we don't know there's no end in sight really for us. And yes, it's great that we're not locked down and we have to be grateful for that. And I guess it's kind of selfish of me because it's me that it's affecting. But why can't people from Adelaide come here? There's no corona in Adelaide. If Brisbane's doing or Queensland's doing good, why can't we be sensible about starting to get some of the interstate travel going and just leave Melbourne out for now, if that's what we have to do?
And that's exactly what's happened here in Queensland. Borders opened back up this morning, and another reason, or not even an excuse, another reason why I didn't get here in time is the roads are complete chaos. I mean, it's went from last week the motorway being empty to the school holidays. They've opened the borders. The roads are complete chaos. So there's obviously interstate movement, north and south here, between South East Queensland and North New South Wales. exactly as you say, Ben, it's only a matter of time before somebody crosses that border into Queensland with, coronavirus and starts to spread. But now we've just got to deal with it, and we'll put together the right fights in the right states that we can make happen. But it has been a lot of juggling.
Yeah, it's a bit of a drama, but there you go. There's not too much we can do about it, so we just got to get on with it.
We'll get you to Perth, Dan. Don't worry about that, mate. You're going in the boot of my car for 6 days.
Smuggle me in, eh?
Yeah.
We talk our way over the border.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, it's difficult for Perth because obviously a lot of the fighters here, especially to do a fight pass card, I mean, we could do an amateur card easily, but a lot of the pros here fought each other. There's not a great pool of people in the same weight class that can fight. So we do rely on interstate travel for our Perth card. So, but we've got a good local main event for that one. We haven't announced it yet, but Jack Dell will be defending his title against another local Perth boy. So, so whatever happens, that fight should go ahead. So it's important for the fighters that are sort of at that end of their career, not the end of their career, but the state of their career where they could progress to bigger and better things, to keep them busy and make sure they're still fighting. So it's really important to get our sort of, I guess our goal is to push people into the UFC. That there's no secret about that. Like we're going to be a feeder show to the UFC. So our guys that we're thinking about maybe making that next step, we need to really think hard about how we can keep them fighting.
Yeah, and that's an interesting kind of aspect of this whole coronavirus situation, is when you think about professional athletes, not even just limiting it to fighters, it's there's only a finite sort of window, whether it be 10 to 12 years or whatever, where someone can compete, at the highest level of their sport. So it's really frustrating. I can only imagine, for some of these fighters thinking that, they're someone like Jack, he's close to, if not in his prime at the moment. And, you have to spend, 9 months on the sideline because of this, global pandemic. It's just
Jack's
slowed everything down.
Most. He's 23, he's luckier than most.
I always forget how young he is.
Yeah, so he's, we're in no tearing hurry for him. I more want to keep him busy for his skills and his, it's good for fighters to fight 3-4 times a year. That's what they should be doing. To stay sharp for me. So, and that's what Jack wants to do. He's got the bit between his teeth and he wants 4 or 5 fights this year. I mean, that's probably not possible, but I think we can probably get him 3. He's had 1 already. Fortunately for a lot of our athletes, they've already fought this year, whereas a lot of guys haven't even had a chance to fight yet. So, so he's in a better position than a lot of people are. But yes, it's important to keep the industry going as well. I do believe that there's going to be like a second wave financially. I think everyone's okay right now because the government stimuluses are looking after people. But I think when they come to an end in September, October time, there might be like some economic repercussions as well. So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out with the shows and people buying tickets and whatnot. Yeah,
September's going to be super interesting because a lot of the like you said, the government handouts are ending, but also there's at the moment, as part of the federal government's response to coronavirus, they put fairly stringent restrictions on different types of insolvencies. So personal bankruptcies and corporate insolvencies. So it's kind of a pretty scary prospect to think that all the government handouts are stopping at the same time when insolvencies are going to kick back up. So, economically, we're going to be in for a pretty wild ride come the end of September and the start of October.
Yeah.
Just in time for our tickets to be on sale.
Bring it on, boys. Bring it on.
Yeah, look, I think people are still going to be pretty hungry for live sport. So, I think we'll be okay.
And the issue that I've got there is, obviously, with our September event in the Gold Coast, is that I can't put together a floor plan at the moment. Nobody can give us a definite on crowd numbers. I'm hearing 2 or 3 other venues giving other promotions numbers, and their numbers at the moment, just don't line up with the guidelines. And we're getting pushed down to stay within the guidelines. You're looking at 250 people, which obviously was financially impossible. So we're hoping that will increase by September. But for us to even get tickets up for sale and to get them underway, and we've got, I've got people asking me every day for tables and for tickets and for whatnot. I just don't know what we're going to put on sale first, or how we're going to devise a floor plan that we can just add to as the regulations are eased. It's probably something me and Ben are going to have to look at over the start of next week. There's enough other things going on this weekend, but there's so much unknown. It's not just the movement of people interstate, it's the movement of people in and out of venues as well, And
it's definitely an interesting challenge, and I look forward to it. I like beating the odds, and I like when things are hard. Like, I guess that's why we've got as far as we've got, because we embrace that. Like, if it's not hard, it's not worth fucking doing. Like, if it's easy, everyone would do it. So I enjoy overcoming those challenges, and when you get to sit cage side and see everything playing out, that's the reward. There's no financial reward, so there has to be some sort of reward. So yeah, I'm excited. It's really challenging at the moment, but that's good for us. That'll make us better. And when it's not challenging anymore, then life will seem a bit easier. But I'm sure we'll find new challenges to keep us on our toes.
Probably segueing from that, looking at what the UFC are doing this weekend, with having, I think they've got a 10 or a 15 kilometre radius round about their compound in Yas Island for this weekend's UFC 251 and the fights. Are you looking forward to that, Daniel? Are you looking forward to that?
Oh, so excited. I mean, I'm probably one of the biggest fans of the sport that you'll ever meet. Every Sunday I'm watching the fights. I have a very understanding girlfriend in that sense. I'm watching the fights from the first fight past prelim all the way to the main event, sitting down and getting comfy for the 5-6 hours it takes. And, this weekend's card is absolutely fantastic. And, props to the UFC. I mean, such a crazy time, and they've done so well to continue to put on events, and the whole idea of Fight Island is, I don't even know if it's necessary even at the moment, but I think just the fact that everyone sort of loved the concept of it so much, they decided to continue on with it. And, looking at some of the footage and stuff that's come out and some of the photos, it's, they've obviously done a pretty spectacular job in getting everything ready. Like, they had an entire Etihad plane that they had chartered from Vegas to Abu Dhabi with all the fighters on it. And you can really, I guess, perhaps you guys more than anyone can really appreciate just the logistics that must go into, them organising an event like this under these circumstances.
I mean, it's looking at it from the outside, just even the backdrop, the setting, everything about it, such an extravagance. They're doing all this without a live gate, just off the back of pay-per-views. It's just, it's next level. It's next level stuff. And I remember I was listening to a podcast earlier on in the week, just when you mentioned the Etihad flight that was going from Vegas over to Abu Dhabi. I think they've done something similar out of Thailand for Peter Yan. I think I heard.
Yeah. I actually heard a really interesting story on that. That apparently,
flight was cancelled, and
a
cargo plane.
Yeah, a cargo plane, and they somehow put seats in it and flew Yan and his team. So, I mean, just huge props to the UFC getting that done. Just like we touched on, the logistics must just be a nightmare. So, the fact that they're going to pull this off.
That's just an organisation proving exactly what Ben was saying a minute ago. There's certain people that flourish when things seem to be impossible to do or seem to be a bit of a challenge, and they embrace that and move forward. And that's obviously what the UFC have done.
It's really us a hell of a card too.
That our sport is the one that's sort of thriving in this pandemic, whereas everyone else is struggling. Like, it just goes to show that the right people are at the forefront of the sport for us. And I love Dana White. I think he's brilliant. I know he curries like you either love him or hate him. He's a bit like Marmite or Vegemite, whatever you want to call it. But no, I'm definitely I'm Team Dana. I like what he's done with the sport, and we probably wouldn't be here if it wasn't for him. So we have to be very grateful for someone like him.
So what's your picks for tomorrow, Dan?
Well, I guess starting at the main event, Usman versus Masvidal. Obviously, I think. Look, I think that Masvidal's had a couple of matchups that I think the Nate Diaz win and the Ben Askren win were, for me personally, it was those fights kind of went how I expected. Not that I was expecting Ben to knock out Masvidal to knock out Ben in 5 seconds with the flying knee, but I did like those style matchups for Masvidal. The Till win for Masvidal was one that really kind of opened my eyes. I was really expecting Till to get the W there, but I just really feel like Usman is just underrated by the MMA community a little bit. I think, looking back at his career, if we just push the Colby Covington fight to the side for a moment, I mean, he's never even had a round being collectively by all three judges scored against him in his entire UFC career prior to that Colby Covington fight. And, obviously we got to see a kind of different aspect of his game in the Colby Covington fight where he, got all his work done on the feet and also showed, that championship level heart in getting that 5th round stoppage. So I just think that he's kind of a really special athlete and a really special talent. And I don't know if Masvidal has the, has the capability to just keep him off him for 5 rounds. So I think that we're probably going to see Usman grind him out over 5 rounds, perhaps more kind of cage control than sort of ground control. But yeah, I mean, I'm super excited, and I think it's going to be a pretty fun fight.
Wow.
So yeah, Usman by decision, I guess, is the official pick.
I'm leaning the same way as you. I think Usman's just far too much for Masvidal. I actually watched that Usman Colby Covington fight again yesterday. What a fantastic fight it was.
Fantastic, yeah.
No, I think the difference between Usman and Masvidal is why people underestimate and people don't give props to Usman. I think his lack of personality is what, detracts from him, from his talent. People just write him off. People, they don't like listening to him. They don't like watching him because of the way that he fights. So, the casuals don't appreciate how good he actually is.
Yeah, I think that's a fair. Summary. I think, sometimes you'll see that with fighters. Kind of external factors will come into how perhaps the public perceives their skill set, and I think Usman's definitely a victim of that.
Right, listen, boys, we're gonna have to rattle through these picks because obviously I've got my hands full.
All right, okay. I'll go through them. I'll go through them nice and quick. So, co-main event. What do we got? Holloway versus Volkanovski 2. Obviously, thanks to you boys, I got to commentate a few fights with Volkanovski in Melbourne at the end of last year, so that was fun. He was fantastic. Kept mid-fight, he'd pull the mic away from him and he'd lean over and go, "Is this okay?" And you're doing great. You're doing great, Volk. Keep going.
He was great. I think he was really good on the commentary. I enjoyed.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, I think he's going to win probably by decision, but. Holloway's taken a lot of abuse in his career, and I wouldn't be surprised if Volk was the first guy to get him out of there. So Volkanovski probably decision, but could see a TKO there as well. I guess before that we'll have the bantamweight title fight between Aldo and Jan. I'm a big Peter Jan fan. I think his stance switching mid combo, the way he drifts is just a thing of beauty. And while I am a big Aldo fan, he was kind of. Obviously, with my Muay Thai background, he was kind of like one of the first guys that I really became a fan of in the sport. But I do think Jan's going to be too much for him tomorrow, and I think Jan will probably put him away. So that's my 3 picks, boys. I think we're seeing Jan, Volk, and Usman taking the belts home.
I'm on page with you. I mean, I've got heart and head picks, and my head picks are exactly the same as yours are. And the only heart pick I'd change probably would be I'd want Aldo to come away and just. He's just such a legend, and he's just given so much to the sport. I'd love to see him have one more reign at the top, but I just can't see him getting past.
I think that's going to be, I think it's a much closer fight than what people are giving it credit for. I think Aldo comes out and makes that fight violent, really violent, and right in Jan's face. It could go any way. I don't see that one going to decision, and I don't see Holloway taking Volko to decision. I see Alex, finishing Holloway within 3 rounds.
There we go. Well, it's going to be good. Hopefully, I already primed the missus that I might want to watch the Volkanovski fight. We have, ties to Alex, and he's one of the boys, and we should get behind him. And I encourage everyone to sort of jump on and support the Aussie fighters when the UFC is rocking and rolling. So yeah, I've been given the green light to have a look at that one. So we'll see if we can squeak that into 3 fights as opposed to just a 1 fight. But we'll see how we go.
Fantastic.
All right. Well, Dan, thanks for joining us again. Apologies for taking up too much of your time.
Not a problem.
Anyone you want to sort of thank, or anyone you want to shout out to before we take off?
Oh, look, I just want to once again, thank you guys for bringing me on board. I think perhaps 24 months ago there was perhaps some debate around who was the strongest promotion in Australia. I think in the last 12 months you guys have well and truly put yourself head and shoulders above the rest, and Eternal are the gold standard for mixed martial arts promotions in Australia, and I'm very honoured and very excited to be a part of that moving forward, and just can't wait for things to get back underway in September and get back in there.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it as well.
Yeah, we appreciate the kind words, and we don't care whether we're the best, we're the worst. We're just doing what we do, and we don't look at anyone else. We just focus firmly on what we're doing and keep doing what we're doing, and try. And the main thing for us is to try and make that pathway to get athletes to where they need to get to. And if we can have some fun in the process and create some good shit while we're doing it, then all the better.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what we say. Is we're not looking at anybody else. We just look at the standard the standard of show that we want to present to people and we want to produce, and we're happy if we reach the standard we set ourselves, which we feel is pretty high.
Awesome. Well, you enjoy the fights, boys. I'm sure I'll speak to you all over the next few days, and we can discuss how the picks went and how the fights were.
Hopefully they all went well.
Yeah, we can. We'll get you back on soon, Dan. I'm sure there's much more we could talk about. You're as passionate about the sport as we are. That's why you're part of the team. Only passionate people need apply to be a part of Eternal. So yeah, we're really happy to announce that you're the voice of Eternal for the foreseeable future. And here's to that.
Fantastic. Looking forward to it, fellas. Thanks again for having us, and go Volk.
Awesome.
Cheers, boys. See ya.